So this is a webinar about remote team buildings that reinforce Agile. And I'm going to show you some of my favorite techniques to uh, games that we can play in order to reinforce Agile with our team. My name is Nick Kramer. This is, of course, me. My camera is on. This is my happy place in Key West, Florida. I love to go there. I'm a father, a fitness junkie, and a wannabe guitarist. I have been doing Agile training and coaching now for about, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. I'm super passionate about building teams. Lately, I've become super passionate on behavior-driven development, automating the behavior-driven development tests, Jira, and Scrum at scale. So those are kind of the things that I am passionate about right now. All right, so I'm going to here to give you my advice, or not my advice, my take on remote teams. All right, here we go. Let's watch this quick video. It's only a few seconds. All right, that's how I feel about last year and this year. Start to clean off the wrong car. Frustrating, isn't it? Anyway, but we're going to make the best of a situation, and hopefully we're coming out of it stronger and better off than we were before. I don't know about you, but I have learned a lot about myself, about how I like to work, about my work style, about traveling. I've learned quite a bit. So remote teams, that's the topic here. So this conversation, we're going to spend some time talking about the Miro, the whiteboarding tool, which is one of my favorite whiteboarding tools to use. I use it every single day as a Scrum Master. But Miro recently put out a survey on working from home, and they came up with 4 major topics here that I find very insightful that I want to cover real quick. The first topic that they got out of their survey was about relationships. And you can go ahead and read this, but 49% of the people that were surveyed said that they think that the working from home, the restrictions to stay at home have actually improved their relationships with their live-in partner. They also, the same people that responded said 62% of those same people believe that their relationships with their children have also gotten better, children 18 and younger. And so overall, respondents said that relationships with immediate family and those closest to them have definitely increased and gotten better, which is exciting. The second major thing that they took away from that survey was that virtual meetings are failing. That we as Scrum Masters and facilitators and managers are not doing as good a job as that we should, which is what we're here to talk about today. 56% of the people surveyed said that they miss in-person meetings, which is interesting to me, and 38% said that they don't turn on their cameras during meetings because they don't want to get caught multitasking, meaning they're off hunting through Facebook and looking at Instagram and watching YouTube videos and that kind of thing when they should be working and they're not engaged. So if you take those two, even just those 2 pieces of information together, it tells me that we as facilitators, Scrum Masters, product owners, managers, have a little bit of improvement to do in our virtual meeting skills. All right, the third challenge that they got here was that, oh, I hit that one too many times, sorry. People find that their routines are becoming more challenging. Now, a lot of people surveyed in this survey enjoyed that they didn't have to commute anymore. They weren't wasting any time in a car or on a train or on a bus trying to get to and from work. all in that kind of stuff. But what I find interesting here is that 33% of the people surveyed said that they begin working within 20 minutes of waking up, which means you're getting up, you're grabbing a cup of coffee, and you're immediately heading to your desk, which is quite alarming from a work-life balance standpoint. And the same people surveyed said that they are working by far more hours, that they feel as if since they're at home that they should be working, which is an interesting dichotomy, right? We're home, we're with our families, as in the relationship section just mentioned, but yet we feel obligated that we should be or could be working more. And of course, the fourth challenge here is mental health. 35% of respondents say that their mental health has actually declined in the last year, whereas 86% of respondents say their work-life balance has increased, which I find interesting that those two statistics seem like they're going in, if your work-life balance is going to go up, that your mental health would also go up also, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So these are the four areas that Miro surveyed on. You can read through this, or you can go out to their blog site at miro.com. That's MIRO. And you can definitely read the survey for yourself, but I find it very interesting. So as I was pondering over this survey came out just the other day, and thinking about putting together this webinar, I had promised in the webinar I would give you 5 tips for working as better teams. So I'm going to start with the first tip, the one that I find a lot of teams are not doing. I spent some time coaching some bank staff recently. This was one of the first things that we talked about. Teams are not doing a good job, especially remote teams, of establishing working norms. So as teams and as management, we need to sit down with our teams and we actually need to define norms in hours. I mean, in writing. Specifically, we need to talk about, what are our working hours going to be? Are we all agreeing that we'll be sitting at a desk at home from 9 to 5? Are we agreeing that our working hours are from 10 to 3 and you can work no matter what? Are we all agreeing that you can work whatever hours you want as long as you're getting your work done? It's super important that we actually establish this norm across our teams so that we can know when to expect each other, to be at work. There's nothing more frustrating when working remotely and you're trying to get a hold of Bob and Bob's not available because he's off doing something else, but you think at least he should be there to answer your question. So in order to reduce some frustrations, I definitely say establish working norms. Another part of establishing working norms is define your preferred communication method as a team. I don't know about you, but I get communication from all over the place. I get emails, I get Teams messages, I even have Slack messages that coming in, right? You get all these different sources of messages, and then it can be difficult to figure out where communication is, to follow threads. So I always encourage teams that I work with to establish one preferred method of communication and stick to that as your sole method of communication or your primary source of communication. For example, you might choose to use only Teams or Slack to do all of your communication. And it sure does save a lot of heartache on teams because then they can find what they're looking for much more easy. And you also then can take that communication with you, put it on your phone, put it on your iPad, put it on your computer. As far as establishing norms, the other thing you need to talk about is how are we going to handle conflict, right? I think it's super important that we establish those rules. And then, of course, establish our office hours. And I mean office hours, individually office hours here. So in the first bullet point, we talk about group hours, but then also establish office hours. So if you're a manager, say, I am not going to schedule any meetings today from 1 to 2. And then if anybody needs to get a hold of me, I have office hours, just like your college professor would do. Same with developers. I think developers should set aside blocks of time to say, I am only going to be coding for this period in the day. If you'd like to talk to me about coding, you are certainly welcome to call me and we can pair, we can work together, but we are not having any meetings there. So oftentimes when I work with clients, they say one of their biggest frustrations is their calendars are 100% booked with meetings and they can't get any work done. Now, those are the same complaints we got when we worked in the office, but at home it becomes even more frustrating because you're at home and then you feel like you need to spend more time after work getting your work done. So my first tip for you on establishing remote teams is to establish these working norms. And like I told you earlier, we are off mute. Everybody's off mute. You could speak. So if you want to take yourself off mute, and are there any remote team norms that you have established with your teams that you find particularly helpful? Where's the attendee list? All right. Okay. Feel free to speak up if you do. All right. Next up is my second tip for you is let's have some fun and let's find ways to reinforce Agile. Remember, you don't work the Agile process, you work with an Agile mindset. And I think sometimes when we go remote, we start to make things a little more rigid than they need to be. We put process in place just for process sake, or because we run into a small impediment and we add process in order to try to solve problems. But remember, we need to always keep this agile mindset when we are working together. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about in order to have some fun is what is called the pizza game. All right, it also helps reinforce agile. I play this a lot with some of my clients. So let's jump over here to Miro. This is a whiteboarding tool. It is one of my favorite tools out there. I would be happy to give any of you a free demonstration on how to use the tool. If this is something that interests you, I'm going to drop a link to this board inside of the chat if you want to come in here and play around. But maybe. Here you go. If you'd like to come in, it's one of my favorite tools. Like I said, I'm happy to give you a demonstration on how it works. But the first game that I like to play is called the pizza game. Okay, let's just get rid of this. Okay, so what the pizza game is it's a game that lasts 3 or 4 hours. It's meant to reinforce Kanban principles or continuous delivery and continuous improvement cycles. This game focuses heavily on helping teams understand how to reduce their work in progress, how to self-manage and self-organize. It teaches them how to remove waste and to build explicit policies to handle their work from a Kanban perspective, and how to learn how to prioritize to get the most value out of what they're doing. All right, so a little bonus tip I'm going to get you here, I'm going to jump back over to Miro, is that this game is actually, the base version of this game is actually included with this Miro tool. So I'd be happy to facilitate it for you, but you can also pull it out of the tool yourself if you'd like to play it. So here's the pizza game. You can see here, the game works like this. What we do is we ask our participants to break up into teams. We establish a product owner for each team, and you could establish a facilitator or scrum master if that also helps. And we're asking teams in a duration of 5-minute rounds to build as many pizzas as possible, focusing on quality. So you can see in here inside of Miro, they show you how to build a pizza. You use the tools off to the side, the drawing tools here, to create shapes. You can make a circle here to, make the crust, and then you can color it in. And so the team figures out, oops, that's not the right thing. The team figures out how to build the pizzas by building crust, sauce, cheese. This is Canadian bacon and pineapple. And the constraints they have is that they have an oven here. The oven can hold at least 3 pizzas at a time, and each time the oven is locked, it has to cook for 30 seconds. So they can only have at most 3 pizzas cooking at a time. So the goal then is for the teams to establish a process of which they can build pizzas in the most efficient way possible by reducing as much waste as possible. All right, so the first round of this game is pretty simple. The team gets points, as you can see down here, on how well they do. At the end of round one, each team then does a retrospective and they decide how they did and what they can do better. And they spend some time establishing better processes. All right, then after that, we go through another 5-minute round. We'll slide down here, and the teams now what we do is we introduce the concept of WIP limits, about not having too many things going on at once and trying to establish a continuous flow model, right? That's the only change we make in round two. We give the team a chance to think about how they're going to do this, and then we of course start another 5-minute round, see how many pizzas we can build quality-wise with reducing as much waste as possible. At the end, we score the points that are listed down here, and the team does another retrospective. All right. At the end of there, we can do a third round, but the difference we do in the third round here is, of course, the team can reestablish their WIP limits in their columns here, but we introduce the concept of orders, and we tell the teams that they need to do things in a certain grouping here, like here's an order for 1 Hawaiian pizza and 2 pepperoni pizza. In order to get the points for both pizzas, they need to complete the entire order. Okay, so the teams need to think through how they're going to prioritize the work in order to get the most points at the end of the rounds. So we add another level of complexity here, and they learn how to inspect and adapt. After the third round, they do another retrospective, and then we do a fourth round that is very similar to the third round with new orderings tickets here, and they run through that again. So it happens a total of 4 rounds. By the end of the fourth round, the team gets pretty good at making these pizzas and trying to establish how to work together. It's a lot of fun. I encourage you to give it a try. What's interesting about using the Miro tool, the way we've designed it here, is there are some tool hiccups that are actually designed into the tool to create impediments. And I won't show you those today, but there's built-in impediments here that the teams need to learn to work around. So the first couple rounds, it seems pretty easy that you're going to be able to make these pizzas and you get into it. And then pretty soon inside underneath this, here's some obstacles that start to pop up that make it a little more complicated. Teams love this game. It's a lot of fun. It's great for team building. It's great for reinforcing all those Kanban principles that we talked about before. And it's also great at thinking about how to do inspection and adaptation cycles. Now, at the end of this game, one of the things that I really like to do is I like to then take the learnings from this game and do a global retrospective. You might have divided it up into several teams playing this game. And I ask the team to then decide what did they learn from this pizza game and how can they apply it to their day-to-day work. And you'd be really surprised some of the very clever things that people come up with by playing this game that can improve their day-to-day projects. So the pizza game is fun. It's part of Miro. I have enhanced the game, changed the rules just a little bit, but you are welcome to pull it out of there and play it if you'd like and change whatever rules you want that make sense to your game. It's actually just a template over here in the left-hand side you can pull out. I do recommend that you find a third-party facilitator to facilitate the game. It makes it a little more interesting, and then you can also play along with your teams. So the pizza game is a great way to reinforce Kanban. I see some people in here joining inside the board. Please play around in there if you like. You're not going to hurt anything. I can always delete it. All right.
This is a more streamlined version of that. There used to be a I know there was a really expensive board game that used to be popular with Agile teams, because I remember we had a coach that brought that in to try, and it was to learn the basics of Agile and then AdWhip. But I'm sorry, I don't remember the name because that was so many years ago now. But I'm just curious if you know what I'm talking about.
I don't know specifically what game you're talking about, but I played several games before that are similar. Yeah. This one is fun because you can play it remotely. Everybody
Yeah,
can play.
right now that's especially good thing.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And I'm going to show you a game that I have created here shortly that is a lot of fun too. Before we do that, let's send out. Anybody have any thoughts while we're talking about this game? I'm going to send out another poll that I'd like to take us to take, please. All right. Anybody have any questions about this game so far? Wait, did that poll go out? Yep. I just dropped all my notes on the floor, wouldn't you know it? So let's see what everybody said here. The poll was about what is your biggest challenge from working from home? Let's see. 29% said distractions. 6% said poor home office environment. 41% said communication with coworkers. And then 24% work-life balance. Interesting. Anybody want to share why communication with coworkers is so challenging? Okay, excellent.
When we can,
Go ahead.
no, when you cannot see someone, sometimes it is not easy to visualize them and understand their body expressions to know how they're understanding you or what is their reactions to it. So that makes it a little bit challenging.
Yes, body language can be a hard to read on uh, online. Even if you have your camera on, sometimes it's hard to read body language, isn't it? Yeah, for sure. Um, I definitely like when I'm in facilitating meetings, I like to get my team to turn their camera on so that I can see their faces and see what they're doing. And I like to get them to engage with me through their camera one way or another. A great technique that I recently learned about engagement is have everybody on your team take a post-it note out if they have one on their desk, or it could even just be a piece of paper, and you can ask them questions when you're asking questions, or you want kind of brainstorming solutions. When someone has the answer, they actually cover their camera with the post-it note. And then of course, when you can see them all, you see that someone's covered their camera up. That means that they have an answer for you. It's a great way to get people to actually pay attention to what you're talking about. And like I said, to engage with you. So it's one of my new tips right now when I'm engaging someone, and I'll say, does anybody want to give an answer? And so rather than jumping all over each other like you do and stumbling through Zoom calls, you over interrupting each other, whatever, you put your post-it note over your camera, and then I can see who would like to put their 2 cents in. And the other great thing about that is if I put my camera up like this and someone else gives the answer or the thought that I had, you can pull your sticky note off of the lens. That means that my point's already been given. And then you can also have everybody keep their post-it up there until they have received, got to speak. So this gives everybody a chance to speak, and you don't forget to call on people because their post-it note is covering their camera, right? So then you make sure that you're covering everybody. Works great for pointing sessions when you say, does anybody want to argue or throw in their information about why they pointed high or point low? They cover their camera, and we make sure now that we're hearing from every voice that wants to provide input. because there's always somebody that's afraid, or we forget to call on them, or we didn't hear them speak up in the background, and they start to feel like, well, he's never going to call on me, so what's the point of even trying? So this little post-it note over the camera lens is a great little tip that I have learned just recently to get to people to engage. All right. Then, of course, we'll talk about the pizza game. Kind of got sidetracked this again. I always go through the Kanban cheat sheet here, kind of describe how the Kanban works. You kind of reinforce what Kanban's doing. This is a cheat sheet that we have created at WebAge. If you would like to get a copy of, I have 2 cheat sheets in the thing here. There's an email at the end of the presentation. Send an email and I'll be happy to send you the Kanban cheat sheets or the Scrum cheat sheet. All right. The second game, these are the rules to the pizza game. The second game that I've learned to play recently, the game that I have invented, is called Agileville, which is a take on the Lego simulation, if anybody's played the Lego simulation. And it works like this. I'll share it with you. Go back over here to Miro. All right, I think I put it down here. All right. So here's all the rules to the game on these cards off to the side. But what happens is if you zoom in here, you can see here, every team, this is the game that was started the other day. I took a snapshot of it. Every team gets a list of, I think there's about 15 user stories here. They assign a product owner to the team, and they assign a Scrum Master, and then everybody else is a developer on the team. So this particular game is meant to simulate the full Scrum lifecycle, from backlog planning and grooming to sprint planning to execution during the sprint, and then finally to deploying working product at the end of every single sprint. So every team gets all of these user stories. If you open them up, you can see here they're pretty vague, just like product owners would probably give. The team discusses these stories, adds additional requirements with their product owners. Like this particular one here is the city needs a high-rise apartment building, right? So that I can rent apartments near the hospital, which is super important, right? It describes how to build it, that it has to be 2 by 4 inches, and that it has to be red and green. So the team goes through every single story and they then prioritize these. There is a clear path that you would want to build some of these cities in, right? So they establish a backlog and then they start to sprint and they build a plan. Like this team here has built a plan. These are what they're going to build in sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3. So during sprint 1, the team gets busy building the stories that they've planned out. They build the stories down below. You can see here they've started to build it. Each sprint lasts a certain amount of time. When the team is near the end of the sprint, they cut and paste this particular drawing that they're doing of their city into a certain section here on the board, and then the product owner, they demonstrate it to the product owner, and the product owner tells them whether they're on the right track or not. The product owner then can adjust the stories in the backlog, or the product owner can reject stories, or just like in real life. And over time, this team starts to build a city over a series of sprints that have things like it has a main road and a bus stop and a hospital, apartments, all kinds of shopping, parking lots. It has a lake, has a car dealership, all of these interesting things. This game itself takes another 4 or 5 hours, but it teaches the team, just like in Scrum, how to plan. It teaches them how to write acceptance criteria. It teaches them how to work with the product owner. If the person is assigned as a Scrum Master, it teaches them how to facilitate. And then, of course, at the end of every single sprint, the team does a retrospective and they figure out how to make the process better. Now, this particular round of this game, we go through I think we go through 4 rounds, 4 or 5 rounds, but most of the time there is some time built into the game at the end where the team usually asks to go through a 5th or 6th round. So they're having such a good time playing this game that they would like to continue because they want to, finish it. The game is clearly not meant to be finished in the time allotted because we never can finish the amount of work that we anticipate getting done in the time allotted. So that's part of the whole exercise. Okay, let's jump over. I'm not familiar with WebEx, so I'm sorry, I got to jump back over here. Keynote. All right, it lasts 3 to 4 hours. This one is meant to reinforce Scrum principles. There is a Scrum cheat sheet here that we then go through throughout the life cycle of the game to make sure people understand what should be happening during each event and what their role is and how that works. So we're constantly bringing it back to understand how it reinforces Scrum. Now, I've even played the game where we play both games in the same day, and we tell the teams then that they can take anything that they've learned from the pizza game and also apply it to this game. Because in real life, that's what we do, right? We take things that we've learned from Kanban and we plug them into Scrum and vice versa. So the games are very similar. They're virtual. They both last 3 to 4 hours, right? One focuses heavily on Scrum. The other one focuses heavily on Kanban. So if this is something that's interesting to you, send me an email at the end and I'd be happy to share, help you out. All right. So there's all these rules to the Lego game here. These games are a lot of fun to play. The teams build a lot of great rapport. Again, at the end of this game, you're going to want to reinforce what the team is currently working on to help them take the learnings from the game into their actual game. Now, you do not have to be a software development team to play either one of these games. I played them, just recently played them with a series of HR administrators. I played the Lego game with a bunch of lawyers last week, which was super interesting that they knew nothing about software development and they knew nothing about anything in this area, but they were able to figure this out. And in the end, the lawyers figured out how they could use Kanban boards by playing the Lego game to build work for their paralegals to work through. So they actually took this game and figured out how they could structure work for their paralegals and their assistants to keep track, to learn how to visualize the work that they're doing, to make sure that they had solid understanding of what everybody was doing. Because just like us in the software development industry, the lawyers are all working from home too, and visibility has become a problem. So, like I said, HR, lawyers. I also did at a bank, a bunch of people at a bank that did compliance work recently. We played the pizza game, and they did the same thing. They were working, moving from one kind of system that kind of reminded me of Jira, but for what they did is track their work and help them manage it. And they were moving from one system to another system. And we took the learnings from the pizza game to design the workflows in the new system that they were going to be building. So it is very, you can take the learnings from this game and apply them somewhere else. All right, one more poll, if you don't mind. What would you say about your remote work productivity? Is it less productive, more productive, or about the same? And of course, these are super scientific polls, though. Make sure that you take all this information back. All right, so let's see. Let's close the poll and see what the results are here. 24% say that they are less productive. 43% say they're more productive, 33 about the same. Interesting. Anybody want to elaborate on why they think they're more or less or the same? All right. Excellent. I personally have days where there are days that I'm thinking I'm being way more productive than I would have been if I went into the office. And other days I can't seem to focus at all and it's less productive. So I think for me, it's probably an even wash, but I personally struggle not being around other people and having the face-to-face, but I don't want to go back to the office either. All right. So I promised you 5 tips. I gave you 2 already. The first tip was, of course, establish team norms. The second was to learn how to have some fun, right? The third one is to focus on the people. And that this isn't coming from just a management standpoint, it's coming from all of us, right? We need to learn to socialize with each other in this kind of new world. And we also need to find ways to mentor each other, right? And this can be that you need mentoring and being to ask for help, or it might be also that you would like to mentor somebody else on your team or somewhere in your organization, even outside your organization, right? So focus on people. Make sure we're trying to establish one-on-one connections whenever possible, right? Make sure that we are hiring the right people that can fit into our organization, that have the same values, and that can work in the way that we need them to work remotely, right? We are familiar with doing this in our normal world where we're going to hire people to work on our team that can work with us face to face, but a whole new challenge arises when we need to hire. So make sure you hire the right people. And then if you're a manager, make sure that you're still prioritizing training and onboarding, right? Onboarding now when you hire new people is a whole new thing, teaching them how to work remotely, where to find things, how to get answers to questions. It's much more difficult because if you're in the office, I can just go over and ask, Bob, who do I need to talk to about this? Bob can point me in the right direction. It becomes much more difficult in the remote environment to ask those same questions. We've all taken jobs where we go to the office the first day and we may not know who to go to, but at least there's somebody standing around us, right, that we can ask. We can ask the person in the cube next to us. We can ask the receptionist, right? We can ask the person, walking down the hall, who do I talk to about this? And they can at least point us in the right direction. But when you're working remote, all you have is a list of names that you're given that you work with until you establish, some relationships. So learning how to train and onboard is a excruciatingly different process working remotely than when we work in the office. Number 4 is that we need to build a culture of accountability. So we need to focus on Agile, right? Whenever possible, being Agile, the Agile mindset. We need to focus on inspection and adaptation. No matter what we do, when we stay in these remote teams, or as time goes by, there's going to become blended environments, and environments are going to change, and we are going to learn to have to build an inspection and adaptation process, right? We're going to have to find ways to adapt. Over the next year or two, things are going to be very challenging. So we want to definitely build that into our culture. We want to build a culture of transparency, right? And most importantly, we want to focus on outcomes, not particularly activities, right? We want to teach our staff what we expect, and we want to teach our teams what the goal is at the end of every single iteration, rather than focusing on individual tasks. It's one of the things that I find super interesting about the new Scrum guide and the timing of it, that they formalized the concept of a sprint goal, right? At the end of every sprint, you should have a goal that you're trying to achieve. And what we're really talking about there is we're focusing less on the individual activities and more on the goal, right? So I think it's super fortuitous that it came out now when that's what we need our teams to start thinking about. Don't be order takers, right? Think about what you're trying to deliver in the end. Now, when it comes to accountability, one of the things that I like to say is in remote teams, especially agile teams, accountability is less about management holding the team accountable. That's important, yes, of course, but it's more about the team holding themselves accountable to the standards of which they have set, right? We set those team norms, we set our standards, we all of those things. We set our definitions of done, definitions of ready. It's about the team holding each other accountable, right? That's the only way that we're going to build things together. And it's the only way that we are going to learn from our mistakes is if we hold each other accountable. So, of course, there's a right and a wrong way to hold each other accountable, but we need to build that culture of accountability onto our remote teams. My last tip is about self-care. Make sure that when you're working from home, or if you're a manager and you have people working from home, make sure that you encourage people to take breaks, right? Don't sit in front of the computer for 8 or 10 hours a day in your home office. There is this technique that I talk about here where there's a lot of studies that show that if you work for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break and then repeat that cycle throughout the day, that you are going to be way more productive. So encourage your staff or encourage yourself, set a little timer. When it goes off, get up and go walk around a little bit, grab a cup of coffee, grab a snack, and then you can come back to work and reset your timer. I use my Apple Watch to do that. It's not 25 and 5, but I can sit sometimes all day without moving. I have my Apple Watch set to at least buzz once an hour to stand up. So when my Apple Watch buzzes, at least I'm getting up once an hour, and I try to walk around a little bit and take a break. So that's one of the techniques that I use. Right? Make sure that you're protecting your time. Time before work is your time. Time after work is your time. Set those boundaries and stick to them, right? Whenever possible. There's always emergencies and things that make that more difficult, but protect your time. Create a nice dedicated workspace in your home. Now, I'm not saying you have to remodel a whole, wing of your house or redo a room, but find a place where you can have a table and a monitor, and it's your place to work, so that when you go into that place, you're working. When you leave that place, you're not working. And then most importantly, along with playing all the games that we've talked about, and I can give you hundreds of games to, not hundreds, dozens of games to play, but I think one of the most important things to do right now during this remote time is to find yourself a work buddy, right? Find somebody that you can communicate with often at work. Find that person that has the similar interests that you can bounce ideas off of. Find that person that you feel safe complaining about somebody else to, or sharing your ups with and your downs with, right? Find that person. There are a lot of studies that say having a best friend at work makes you more productive and makes your time at work, much more satisfying. So don't throw that away just because you're working from home. Find yourself that buddy that you can communicate with. And makes life easier. Right as the pandemic started, I took on a new long-term client for a year. I'm just now finishing that project, and it was one of the challenges that I had when I first started, was to find that person at the company that I could relate with and could have a little fun with and joke with and all those things. So self-care, find yourself a buddy, super important. All right, so I shared some of my techniques here. I shared my Post-it note camera trick that I like to play, put a Post-it note. I showed you the pizza game that you can take from Miro, if that's something that interests you. I showed you the Lego game that I use to reinforce Scrum. I'm curious now, in the last few minutes, what are some of the techniques that you guys are using to engage with your teams or your coworkers? You have to have some good tips that we can share.
Like you have mentioned about the game, we have similar ones like a short game, like 5 to 10 minutes game, which can be played among all the team members. The icebreaker, we do that.
What is it?
Like, for example, you have to tell about yourself. Suppose what is the first car you own, or what is the best place you visited, or you like the most, the place you visited, something like that.
Okay,
Just
I like it.
say about a minute or two, and you go around the team. So
All right. Excellent. A game along those lines that I like to play sometimes, and I'll show it to you. I've established this game inside of Miro also. I said I'm a huge fan of that. So along those same lines is here, it's called the Challenge Bowl question. And so behind each one of these sticky notes here is a different question. So you can ask everybody to pick a number between 1 and 30, and you zoom in here, and when you click on it, this board is locked. You can unhide what's there. So the example, this one here is, would you rather have a bee sting on your face or hold a snake? And then you answer the question and explain why. So it's a great way to build team building also. And there's 30 of them here that you can choose from. Some of them are, take pictures of things and upload those to the board of yourself, making a funny face or something like that. So it's another great way to engage with your team. This game only takes about 15 minutes to play, depending on how many people are on your team. That's another fun game you can play. Excellent suggestion. What other facilitation or techniques have the rest of you picked up on during this remote time that we could all learn from? None? I know you came to hear me give my suggestions, so I'm curious. There's lots of great ones out there.
Well, I guess one thing that I've done is to create social or unstructured networking opportunities to replace the unstructured conversations that used to happen in the workplace as a way of building teams, as a way of allowing new people to get to know the rest of the team, that sort of thing.
Such as like you invite people to a certain time to all just kind of sit around and shoot the breeze kind of thing?
Yeah, or even move people between different breakout groups to kind of introduce them, but have the conversation small enough that people can actually talk to each other and interact.
Oh, nice. I like that. Um, yeah, I do belong to a couple of those groups outside of work, which are also super helpful to sit and be part of groups of other people, to engage with other people that you may not normally engage with also, which is, there's this thing I just put on the screen here. I've been conducting for the last few months lean coffee sessions with a group of clients, but we've recently decided to open them up to the general public. So the next lean coffee we're going to be doing is on April 27th. I think it's around noon. If you'd like to register, you can register for it here. But it's a great group of people that get together to talk about all things Agile, Scrum, Kanban management. And I'm not sure if anybody's ever done a lean coffee before. It's also something you could do with your group. If you're interested in the rules on lean coffee, you can look them up, or you can send us an email and I'll be happy to send you the rules. But what lean coffee is everybody throws out a topic or two that they would like to talk about. And then the group itself votes on which topics they find the most fascinating, and then you spend time box periods of time talking about those topics. So you start by talking about them for anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes, the first topic. At the end of 8 or 10 minutes, the group decides, would you like to continue to talk about that topic? And we all vote, usually do thumbs up, thumbs down on the camera. If you continue to talk, you talk for another 5 minutes or so, and then you vote a third time if you'd like to continue talking. So you do 3 rounds. At the most, you're going to talk about a topic maybe 15, 16 minutes, and then you move on to the next topic on the list. It's a great way to get advice. It's a great way to share experiences. So you could try those at your companies also, or if you're interested in joining mine here, I'd love to have you. I'd love to hear your voice, love to hear your experiences.
Well, as it happens, I was in the last Lean Coffee, I think, that you hosted through this organization. So I can vouch for that. I think it was a pretty smooth experience. I had a good flow to it. And I promise everyone I didn't get paid to say that.
And you did the one, and that was, I think that was the first one we did with that particular group. I've got some other groups I did them with. And so that was only the first time. So it's only going to get better, folks. So you should join us. Thank you for your pitch there. Checks in the mail.
Woohoo.
I appreciate all of your time today. I will be around if anybody wants to stick around and chat for a few minutes. Otherwise, have a great day and thank you for attending today and have a great weekend.